Hi, I'm Will Harris, the Flame Family Product Manager, and I'm here with Stefan Gaio from a52.
Hello.
How are you today?
I'm good, thank you.
Thanks for joining us, Stefan. We're doing a bunch of videos here on your really cool creative work, and we've been talking about PBR, physically based rendering, 3D texturing. We've looked at some examples that are in the other videos of a completely CGI shot of a product. We've looked at using those kind of 3D texturing and lighting techniques in like a building replacement situation. So check out those other videos if you'd like to see that. But right now what we want to talk about is taking those techniques and kind of bringing it to solve a problem of motion design or kind of artistic layered texturing for a Cirque du Soleil project that you worked on.
Mm-hmm.
I think we'd like to have a look at some before and afters. We'd like to see the techniques that you used, and then maybe you can explain to us some of the challenges, the problems to solve, and why you ended up using these techniques in Flame to solve these problems.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Maybe we'll start with showing what two shots that were finalized.
Yeah. So this is the aesthetic that we're sort of working with, right? Where we want to be able to use the practical person and like the dust elements to reveal some design element that you have to create or work with and make the two combine.
Yes, exactly.
Is that a good way to say
it? The pitch. The thing was using their performers and performance, the choreographed performance to reveal their mural from a white wall textured.
I think that when people see this kind of product, they think that it's sort of been designed that way or was one render, and it's hard to understand the kind of the development process that goes into getting those looks, and especially if you wanted to interact with a director or a creative person that probably cannot describe how they want it to look, right? Mm-hmm. They just have ideas. Can you talk us through some of maybe the approaches that could work and why they didn't, and why you ended up choosing textures in Flame to do this?
Well, yeah, as a photo, you could do just a matte painting, and that would. But then, if you need to, if the shape or even having the concept in the first place, you're going to have to play and experiment and change, and then present this to some clients, and then change things. So if you go with a matte painting solution, then you're going to have to redo the matte painting every time, and then it's again from a Flame sessions perspective. That means you get out of the bay, back into emails, explanations. Hopefully you're on the same page for how you describe things, because wording might be also involved. So CG is a little more involved in terms of, you're going to have back and forth in a research form. So in any case, there was an idea of starting just mucking up things, rough images, putting cracks here, cracks there, where does it open, and then giving this to a matte painter. That was the original solution that was brought in. So that meant that any change wouldn't be dynamic. You would have to explain it and then make the change, get it back, and also we didn't clearly see how the reveal would work without being basically a wipe of his shape, even with a recursive where the mat builds up to fill in. Right. So the edge of it wouldn't have been dynamic and moving and pushing textures and revealing this. It would have been just basically a wipe between two images, one with the mirror wall and one with the painted plaster textured wall. We did a little of this, but then I thought that we needed to have something that we could dynamically change and have what I call procedural effect, where you don't have to keyframe so many things of a shape and this and that so precisely and you should try to get where an easy way to change the shape and then having everything react to that. So just really decide that the reveal is not going to be on the legs, or it is going to be on the legs. Well, you just basically move a Gmask key, and that's it. As opposed to completely redoing the matte painting, or the reveal, or back and forth. So that's instant. You can see right away with the heaviness of the batch, which is still very, very. It's not that heavy. It's really you can see your result, the context result, and move something, and then change the depth. There were discussion about. Does it reveal that? Do we see some cement intermediates between the wall, the paint, and the back wall? Do we see? Is it deep? Is it very thin coat of paint? Is it colored? Is it so playing with this also with the using the textures, just dormer maps and lighting and displacement. Then was keeping it completely procedural. We want the wall thicker. Well, it's change the parameter and it's thicker. It's.
It sounds really cool. So it's in a funny kind of way. It looks like a sort of a 2D problem here, but you're solving it with 3D techniques like procedural textures that can understand lighting, understand normals to get the sort of the bump mapping, the detail.
Exactly.
But also you're kind of closing the feedback loop by not having to have a separate stage like matte painting to be able to then change the way you interact edges. You're not just wiping from one to another. And if something needs to be changed or rotated or get a lot larger suddenly, you're not hitting the edge of a rasterized image. You're taking procedural textures and being able to kind of do whatever you want in one tool. And
Exactly.
that's a great use of flame.
It's huge. Yeah, it made a huge difference. I think it basically made the project possible to deliver in that time frame and offer so many variations and be so responsive, and so directors very happy. Clients are very happy to see changes so fast. And again, what you see in the batch, in the context, if you change something, that's in the timeline. Again, it's not going to go. You're not hoping that it's going to be treated and then comped and this, and it's going to look something cool. No, it's going to look like what you are looking at, which is huge.
Let's dive in and take a look at a batch.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's look at maybe the plates
Okay.
that we started with. So that's ungraded. That's just what was shot. That's one shot.
Right. You can see the practical smoke, but that's not enough design. They want the mural to kind of reveal.
Yeah. Also, the body would reveal and have interaction with the paint, but also the dusty powder element that's on their body would need to have interaction, and that again even more. It would be pretty hard to reveal without doing a wipe that you see through. It's not always completely opaque. You see through, so the matte line would have been a little tricky to get.
It's a very organic kind of interaction between the practical elements and whatever textures mural you're going to build.
And some roto, of course, for the matte of them. The dust matte was done in classic 2D extractions.
There's our spaceship batch.
Spaceship again, another one, another shape.
We like to say that all good batches look like a spaceship, or like you were saying, an action should look like a sailboat.
Yeah. It's the whole goal. The notes don't really matter. It's just the shape of it. So yeah, a few things happening. There are two sections, mostly one for on the left side, that little cluster for the body work, how the body reveals the mural. There's the part up there that is the mural, and then the secondary thing for what happens with the puff of dust or powder pigments.
And how that interacts with it.
And how that affects the texture and the reveal. And so here we're in maps, we're in texturing. So
Yeah.
we're in a map world. So I'm going to talk about base color or diffuse, depending on the model. And then mostly a normal map and a little displacement. That's all it took, basically. But variances of shapes and then math operations, if you or logic ops between
Right.
elements and variances that give the details to the texture.
And this is where the 3D texturing comes into play, right? It's maybe not using all of like the PBR, metallicness, roughness, but picking the pieces that make sense to sort of solve a 2D problem with 3D textures
Yes.
and detail.
Yeah, getting to the essential. In that case, there's not really a need for metallicness variances in the object. It's a wall. It's same thing. The roughness is dealt with grading, but definitely the normals were what was different levels of normals. What was needed. So we have a very simple shape here, and I just added another one just to demonstrate. Okay, we have something that looks like that would be a complete reveal, but with the use of the magic Grunge Matchbox, you get you start to get if you get into more details with the more natural shape. I won't say organic, but a more natural, not something and it can propagate. If you look at that in context, first thing is this one with quick reveal here.
So
that's reacting and propagating very nicely with just one treatment. So you can see how if you break that out a little more and then multiply with a different noise and do this and do that, then you can get really nice and complex textures that reacts super simple. And if we look at the even the final of that branch, the output result of that branch, without that,
it's really a way of sort of revealing the effect and understanding matte edges in a really, I mean, to me it looks very organic. It's this kind of magic trick of way of making this kind of raggedy edges that maybe your client couldn't even describe, but you could find it and then and sort of nail the look.
completely, yeah. Yeah, if you want, that would be right here, one matte painting version.
Right, but that
To a quick
couldn't be
change.
interacted with.
Yeah, and then that is a different matte painting version. So here you already have, between these 2 seconds, you probably have a few hours already, or 1 hour or something. The back and forth makes it a little longer. But here it's really...
But if you suddenly wanted to just see like the left-hand half or the right-hand half, all you have to do is move your reveal mask versus a re-render.
Yeah,
in a more linear workflow with another artist.
Yes, and that's basically, it all is driven, everything is driven by that shape. So it's pretty, and it's still very interactive.
You can, I mean, you've got, as we like to say, total control.
Yeah.
Of this element, like, so you're able to change the interaction of the edges. You could even change what's in the middle, huh?
So that the what is revealed, is right now is it is a matte painting, slightly modified version of the mural, just to see one part or another, depending on the gesture, directions, the natural dynamics. But yeah, you can see how they join together or separate in a very easy.
Yeah, it's like
quite
a million
way.
variations. Like they'd have to render it 100 times to give you even close to the flexibility.
Yeah, yeah. Based on something very simple. Once it's set up, you can take this, apply it to another shot. Once we have the roto, you just pipe this into the recursive, and there you go. You have the next shot. And then
different shape mask to reveal.
Yeah, so it really, you plug anything in and it almost works right away. Or it does, and then you tweak it. Yeah.
And could you actually show us the mural and like the treatments that you did on it?
Yeah, okay. So that's an older version, but the principle's the same, where color correction, position adjustments, to pick one part or another that goes with the shape, with the performer's
Okay.
gesture.
Yeah.
And then here we have cold plaster texture, where we get the normals from it. Some normals you could paint before, do something, and basically choose your texture, and then that gets the with
Yeah, I
a
see.
light, just the normals, and then that gets really how much texture you're going to get there. Then of course you could add, if needed, some roughness, some other maps to treat this to your liking. At the end, we used a brick texture because the wall, the building, which is projected on, is a brick wall. So if you same thing, move, change the normal. We're gonna zoom in and look in here. Again, you're changing
Right.
well through the grain and that type of texture, but I think we can still see pretty nicely what it does to the world.
I mean, it's like it's pure art direction is really kind of what it is. Like being able to change the way it's responding to light, being able to move the surface, change the matte edges.
Yeah.
It's like it's really hard to
I
imagine.
think,
Thing. So
yeah.
you can move things around.
Get another part of it. And then you could also, of course, change the. If you would have a brick texture, then yes, modifying here, and then the brick normals wouldn't rotate with it. Or if you would want to have crooked bricks and make a funny construction, yeah, up to you.
So it feels very freeform, creative.
It's
in
very, yeah,
nature.
it gives a lot of freedom basically to whatever you would want. And then we get into building the body shape texture. So do we
Okay.
have cement intermediate? Is it gray? Is it
Let's see that. That sounds cool.
a few? So on the way there to create the maps, there are a few other thing that happen of variants of this, so you can start to get the idea of if you get one and the other, you can get with some operations multiply, max light, and some you get variations of that.
Some of the mystery or the magic of compositing here, you're taking like the croc shaders for matte edge manipulation, traditional Boolean op techniques, and you're just building something that is kind of undefinably organic in its edges, and it's very cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So, and that's using another tool to do similar things, the deform, where so now we can see with the few keyframes on the Gmask that we have, it's gonna propagate the same way. Then control on the pattern, the frequency, how heavy that deform is, so you get to really different sort of texture that again you're gonna
Blend
mix
those
together.
together. Yeah.
Combine together, sometimes subtract or add or this or that, for two different things in that case, one for the base color and one for the normals, which will create the depth of it and then allows it to catch the light and react to the light.
It's starting to look more like sort of smoky edges.
Yeah, more detailed. Fractal might not be the right exact type of noise, but the propagating and detailed.
And none of it is essentially committed. You're able to manipulate this whilst looking downstream. It's a live comp.
Yeah.
And it's all just
Completely. In that
the thing.
case with the first test, I could bypass that. That was the beginning, starting to put the mock-up, putting a few things, and then we would send that to the matte painter. And it's not in the final. At some point, we just removed that because it wasn't fitting with the shape we were using. So maybe I can even hide
Revealing
that.
through cracks is what was one of the ideas.
So
Yeah,
you
yeah,
can see
yeah.
here,
And it looks like someone ripped the paper.
the explanation was, well, it reveals, so you're going to have, we thought, well, it's going to have thickness, it's going to have variances of what, the different, maybe it had different coats of paint before, or in that case, we went with some cement. So that's a flat, what we're looking at now is just the base color of what's going to be. You can see how we exaggerated the normals previously
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
But that's a flat. That's the base color of the texture. It's pretty much what you would build when you create a substance texture, a PBR substance texture, or another one from the substance designer application, algorithmic. That's exactly what you do. It's the exact same thing. So whatever happens when creating the substances that you would load, you do the same here. You create your own substances, your own textures with in a procedural.
Right. So what you're doing here is you're bringing 3D techniques to the sort of the 2D compositing, and maybe a great example here is how you can create relief and make stuff look like it's really kind of tearing through the wall. And I can imagine the client saying to you, "But it has to look 3D." And in a normal renderer of like 2D elements, it wouldn't. So how did you sort of achieve that? Maybe you could show us a bit of that.
Yeah. So it's using normals and displacement, and then light, of course. So to give a dimension, to go from that flat surface to displaced pixels. It's using the elements that we're using for the base color, but altered and with a few variations, a few more cracks, a few more details that do create. So that's what we look here when we break out the shape using the deform, and so that's creating what will be, where it will be bumped, where it will catch the light.
Wow.
So adding, so that was, I think that's close to what the base color matte was, but adding some details to it, and then a little more, and then we get to.
So it's not just a map; it's informing the map extractors, if you like, in Flame to be able to create 3D depth.
Yes, and we could maybe set that
really
as
cool.
a context and illustrate. Set that at 6, and then illustrate with that little guy we had here.
I think this is the stuff that people find hard to understand how it's possible. So it's a combination of 2D techniques and 3D techniques that allows you to get this. Yeah. So there's the normals being.
That would be just for the normal. That wouldn't change the colors where you have some cement, but the cement would be not as far behind, layered. You would change what texture is in front, what is behind, what is. So then that normal gets to here and used with displacement. So that's the normal created, and then here I think it was, by the way, using the ambos with the normal map option. And then here
so
you have.
Park it there for a second and zoom in on that. So this is how you go from like just basically like a sort of a 2D render to something that looks like it's really bringing the 3D world into the equation, right? People have seen normals before, people have seen displacement, but it's like using it as part of like motion design is, I think, the thing that really jumps out at me here.
And then we get to, so that's
nice.
That's the render with some matte animated. Again, it ended up being the matte using the recursive flame tool. And then we get to the second part with using the element, the shot element, again, and classic extractions. More extractions of, that's pretty much the matte. and then subtracting the guy that was before we had the roto, so not the perfect matte, but we getting there.
So you're trying to isolate the character and the dust.
Yes.
To be able to use to do another layer of revealing.
With the dust. So. Yep. Which is a little late. The dust comes after. Sometimes it's a little. It's at the end. It goes in front of the, depending on the movements, or it's some sort of trail behind in some cases. And then.
So now combining
now
the two.
We're using this for the. That's the base color.
Original texture coming in.
For the top part, and that comes from the footage. If we look at that footage, maybe set that context. Using
like
adding the thing with dust, and then from that recreating. Putting the two together and then going through a new normal map.
That's great, and then it's into all of it gives that
will
relief.
Then again give. We can see this just a few keyframes here where that is the second pass of revealing where it creates other secondary cracks and revealing more. It's the same principle, and then the rest is mixing back and dialing in and out the few parameters, some grade, and then we're going to put the guy back over the performer, and then after that are going to be the integration. But
so we're really feeling that the smoke is generating the reveal. Yeah, you're able to create something that maybe, like we said, your client couldn't describe, other than that when they see it, they're like, that, I want that. And that needs to be used for all the shots or whatever. And you're just able to, through your creative iterations, get something.
Yes, exactly. For instance, from our first pass research and showing to the client, they didn't want to see the cement part. And that was a little too destroyed. They wanted a softer reveal, a softer feeling for what it was. Not a too cracked and cement, and something much faster. So that was pretty easy.
You have a button for a softer feeling?
We have a button right there for much softer feeling, which might be that is in one way.
Feeling.
And then probably this one. And if we look at the context again, if I hide that, it's gone. We don't have. Or that could be just instead of being layer 3, instead of being very dark gray, you could think of it bringing lifting up the color, where you would keep the level of what was that, 8? Did I say? Levels of detail, keeping some areas instead of just hiding them, but making that much lighter as some sort of other plaster, or it could be a coat of paint. So that we dialed that back a little, changed the color, the thickness, less depth, and then softer, or how we see how this reacts now with the dust, with a much softer. There are some shots and some points where it really likes when the dust goes on the plaster that you're blowing. Something is blowing, and it links the two together. The dust going out, and then how you get from the thickness to progressively something that's flat and revealing the mural behind. There are probably areas here where you start to see this in these where there's a softness, where here it looks like almost you're blowing in some
look at that, how it's
plaster or
it's sort of it's in sync. It's able to feel like the dust is coming off the wall, even though the wall is completely generated.
Yes, yeah, and that was really the challenge, the goal. How do you try to link the two without being in a wipe world,
Right.
and have something where it breaks out the shape. The dust is in a straight matte line, and
Wow.
it's pretty complex, the dynamics of this and the
Yeah.
thickness. You get opacity, chunks, the speed, different
Correct.
speeds of different parts of that thing, and it reacts to it. It reacts to the extraction of that matte, and it's revealed by it. So, and it
Right.
with the dimension.
And it just wouldn't work if you were using a soft edge matte to reveal the wall versus the white,
Yeah.
because you wouldn't get the relief. You wouldn't be able
Exactly.
to change it procedurally. It seems like this is, as much as this is about texturing, this is a masterclass in the art of compositing and sort of taking art direction and being able to make it happen.
Yeah, cool. That was really pleasant to develop and then to work with, and the relation being, having a director was really really happy seeing changes, and saying,
Right.
well, can we try that? Of course, 2 seconds, and then
Yeah.
2 minutes render, and you have it. So the whole experience is much nicer and fun. I think here you can clearly see how it goes with the dust, how it's,
Yeah.
and we have variances with more color, less color, and we did
That's
a
great.
lot of iterations in no time.
It's great. And there's very little of it pre-rendered. You could still go back to the individual masks to change the way it reveals or the way the edge detail
Yeah.
comes off. It's cool.
And then, of course, you can elaborate on this and say, if it's a metal texture, you'll just add layers of complexity and
Right.
mix that together. And you get to the textures that we've looked at in some other videos, with the edge wear, with
Yeah.
the shadable with red paint on it. You can achieve that with creating your own textures, your maps. I'm not even using the materializer, the substance materializer, but really, you could paint something, animate a G-mask, and then one very simple shape gives you a complex propagation.
It's amazing. Amazing what you do. So Stefan, thanks for doing this with us.
Pleasure.
We've seen 3 different ways of using Flame as a CGI app. The laptop shot, where it was a kind of pure 3D scene, lighting, rendering, all done in Flame. We've seen the HP spot, where you did a building set extension using a procedural texture. Just now we looked at the Cirque du Soleil piece, where you're also bringing 3D techniques to essentially like a 2D compositing problem to be able to get very fast feedback all in one system. Is there any other things that you would tell us about the techniques you've used?
I would say use them to everybody. It's there. It's there. There's a lot more to explore. I feel like I've scratched the surface. Give it a go.
So thanks to you. Thanks to the guys at a52 for letting us borrow you for a couple of days here. It's been great stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it.